Okay. All right, everybody. Good evening. Welcome to the November board meeting. Sorry, to those in the audience and who may be listening online that we're running just slightly late, but I will call to order the meeting at 7:04. And actually, Miss Skyer, if I'm not sure how the minutes go, but we had a governance session and we started that at 6:05. Just so.
So the meeting actually started at 6:05.
Yeah.
With governance, so.
Okay.
And I could.
All right, so the first item on our agenda is approval of the board minutes from our October meeting. Does anybody have any comments or changes that need to be made to the minutes? All righty, I'll go ahead and deem those approved by unanimous consent. And we will move on to our support group update. For the PTO update, do we have any of our PTO?
No, I had not received notes. I know we just did a birthday celebration at the high school and they have some other upcoming plans, but I don't think there's anything pressing right now. So we'll just pass on that for the
Okay,
time.
awesome. Thank you. And then our athletic boosters, Mr. Schlegel.
Good evening. Let me get my notes out. Right, Mr. Smith? We've had a great fall, so I want to make sure I didn't forget anything. So the fall's wrapping up. We got 2 more sports in season right now, but it has been an amazing fall. Our football team finished 6-3 this year, which is one of the best records we've had in a long time. But I don't just go off of wins and losses. I go off of kind of the environment, the culture, and how things are going. With Coach Montre coming in, it's been a great season. Our numbers are up in the program. The excitement, the smiles. It's definitely been a different year. It's been really exciting to see. So I just want to commend that football staff and the direction that they're heading with the kids. Sorry, my phone went off. All right, so we had 4 women's teams win conference championships this year. Our women's golf team, our women's cross country team, our women's tennis team, and our volleyball team. All of them are conference champions. Our women's tennis team and women's cross country team are regional champs. Are both going to state championship on Saturday. This is the 2nd straight year for women's tennis to win a regional championship, so they're heading back to the state championship for the second year in a row. And women's cross country, this is their 3rd regional championship in a row. So we're really, really excited for them. The year that we've had, like I said, to have all of our women's teams sweep the conference championship is, I don't want to say unheard of, but it's an amazing feat. We have some really talented athletes at Lake Norman Charter, and obviously this fall, the women's programs have really shined and shown what they have. The Royal Golf outing in early October was very successful. It was at Northstone on Monday, October 9th. We sold out 144 golfers and we raised $22,000. This is our 4th year, and in comparison, the highest we've had the past couple years is been around $13,000. So we've made that jump. Every year we continue to get better. The committee that does this with D. Thomas and a bunch of parents, they put a lot into it. You know, the volunteers, they put their time into it. We went auction online this year so we could get it out to the public, the LNC community ahead of time. So there's a lot of things we continue to get better at and grow this golf outing. I'm hoping in years to come, we continue to climb the ladder as far as how much we can raise for LNC athletics. The winter sports kicked off Monday. So we got Swim and our basketballs up and running, and they're going to start their games here later in November. And I believe that is it for me.
Okay, thank you. Congratulations to the ladies on clean sweeping the regionals and conference championships. So, and congratulations to all our teams this fall for a great season. And great job on the golf outing. What a wonderful accomplishment. So, we'll move now to the state or school report.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So the first thing I want to share with the board is that our lottery for the 24-25 school year went live yesterday. Midday, I received a report from Sue Scott, who is our registrar in charge of the lottery. And at that point, we were already at 680 applications midday on day one. So day one is always a big day. So I don't want anybody thinking we're going to do that every day, but it was always exciting to see, and that was the most we've ever had on the first day, and that was midday. So I'll report back out to the board as we continue on through the process, but excited to see a strong showing there. I did want to update numbers. We had to report to the Department of Public Instruction of our ESL students. Now that's English as a second language. Some students that are being serviced, and then some students that their English as a second language is strong enough that we just monitor them. And we currently, Ms. Johnson, who is our ESL teacher, is currently providing support to 43 students directly to give them the enhancement that they need to be successful. And there are 44 students that she checks in with regularly just to make sure that they're tracking and doing well. So gives us an idea of, we have a fair amount of students that when they go home at night, English is not their first language at home, and how can we make sure that they're being successful? And then if somebody wants to give Mr. Mavity a microphone, I did want to let the board know we are participating in a what they call the check-in pilot. So it might be Mr. Mavity, it might be Dr. Graham giving a little bit of backup, but we are doing a pilot, and just to talk a little bit about that, because it's something that the state's trying different to help better assess kids instead of just one time at the end of the year. So, Mr. Mavity?
Yeah, you said it best, Ms. Steins, but yeah, it's just a personalized instruction. So the state has basically come through and said, hey, we want to pilot this program with check-ins 2.0. And it basically looks at STEM questions that you would typically see on the end of grade test. And it gives students periodically benchmarks throughout the school year where they get an opportunity to see those question stems, become familiar with the assessment, but also realize that if you take there's 3 assessments, but if you take 2 out of the 3 assessments, the state has said that there's a formula basically that says like how your strengths, playing off of your strengths. So how you do on those benchmarks, how you do on those assessments, that you'll see that those students that would get that end of grade assessment, that this test will play off of their strengths and hopefully put them in a better position to show growth on those end of grade tests. And so the state has said that the state of North Carolina is asking for feedback from teachers, administrators that are doing these pilot programs. And it could be a possibility that we would move in that direction as a PSU as a mandated thing. But right now we're still in the pilot phase. But I wanted to put Lake Norman Charter on that kind of leading the pack and taking that assessment and seeing what the feedback is. In the event we had to go that route, we were already prepared for that. So that was the baseline high level of the North Carolina NC Check-ins 2.0.
Thank you, Mr. Mavity. So that's just another way for families. The board did some training before the general board meeting, just talking about how we best assess and support our students. And this is another example where families will be given feedback and students to see where they're tracking to help better prepare them for upcoming tests and to support them as an ongoing process. So again, only for 6th and 7th grade this year, but it is something that we're going to try out and see how that best works for our students. So, and that's all I have.
Well, I do believe you missed one big thing, the serve and play.
Oh, gosh. Yes. Well, we talked a little bit
just
that
a little minor thing.
Yeah, no, it's not. And we talked a lot about serve and play last time. So yes, that I would be remiss in saying, first of all, huge thank you to Sarah and her team, and also Scott Abel and his team. Hopefully you noticed that the campus looks fantastic. There were a lot of improvements. It hadn't been zhuzhed up in this way for several years since COVID, and it was a lot of work in preparation done by by both the individuals that Sarah and her team and then Scott and his team to make sure that that was possible. It was really cool and some definite too many to mention teachers who stepped up either to be outside and or administrators to be outside to help guide students, to check in parents. Ms. Carr did some of that as well. And one thing, both of our middle school PE teachers did all kinds of interactive games on the field. It was really cool to see the different kind of old fashioned relay races, and the kids really seemed to have a great time. So it was an excellent time, and I should not have forgotten that since we just talked about it today in our admin meeting and maybe plans for the future. But it's always great when we get a chance to have our kids interact with each other and live our mission. So it was a good day, and thank goodness for great weather as well.
Right. Thank you, Ms. Stein. We'll move on to old business. We'll start with Ms. Benford in the IDE&A committee report.
Thank you. Okay, I think we have a little bit of duplicate. Can we go to the next slide? Okay, so for October, we had our committee meeting on October 9th. As I get into some of the other things going within the next talk a little bit of thank you. I'll talk about some of the things that we learned from that space and some of the things that will be coming up. But on October 16th, I do want to spend a little bit of time talking about the event that occurred on October 16th. That our staff at all three schools had the opportunity to have neurodiversity training. And I got the opportunity to attend with them. I was very grateful for the opportunity to sit in because this is an area for both IDE&A as well as Thrive that I think is really important in our community as our demographics change and evolve at LNC. So there were two speakers. One was from the Autism Society of North Carolina, and the other one was from an organization called Marvelous Minds. And so the Autism Society was not only an employee there, but also a parent of an autistic child. What I thought was very interesting is he's not a child anymore, he is an adult, but her being able to acknowledge that her son would have been one of a few autistic children when he was in his school ages. But when they asked the teachers in the room how many of them had an autistic child in their regular classroom, not in a pulled out class, but in their regular classroom, the majority of teachers had raised their hand. And so it just shows the landscape has changed where we're integrating students into our regular classes, which I hope is beneficial for them. For also the students that are not autistic, but also just the prevalence. And again, for our school community, it is additional work for our teachers, but there were some amazing tips that were provided. The other instructor or the other speaker from Marvelous Minds was speaking more about ADHD and IEP and 504 meetings. But one of the things that I thought was really interesting too was the fact that there was so much overlap in how we serve all of our students that are neurodiverse. So there was, for me, what stood out was the consistency behind the importance of structure, of organization, of checklist, and just providing tools for our students to be successful. But it also was eye-opening that with so many of our students having different forms of neurodiversity, that our teachers also have a big task because it's not a one size fits all for any of these students. So I thought it was a great start And I'm excited for us to be able to regroup as a committee and talk about what some of our opportunities might be for the school community. So that was really great. To move on a little bit, the elementary school started a new tradition in October. They're giving students a bookmark every month to highlight the theme, the IDENA theme for the month. And so the October theme was Indian heritage. And so for October, they were planning to highlight influential Indian people each day for the like the last full week of October. They were listening to digital books from an online library. They were going to focus on actresses and entertainers, Nobel Peace Prize winners, the first Indian astronaut, quite a few different things. And this will continue in November as they celebrate Diwali. And there will also be an additional celebration in March. They'll be singing songs for Diwali. And then coming up in March, they will also be singing songs for Holi. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Okay. And so that sounds really neat. Every month they'll know exactly what they're talking about. And so if we go to the next slide, in the high school, as many of you know, Hispanic Heritage Month does cross 2 months. And so we talked last month about, I'm pretty sure, because I did miss last month's meeting, but the bachata lessons had begun already in September, but that did continue in October as well. Also, we have some amazing high school students on this committee. And so we have some regular committee members that are part of the IDENA committee, but we also had a guest attend to talk about, I skipped, I'll come back in a moment, but we had a guest attend to talk about the student empowerment ambassadors. He talked about the things that they have done with the middle school and the elementary school around acceptance. But he also proposed a plan for the beginning of the year to expand within the high school, the Socratic Circle discussions to talk about the student experience. And so that was really amazing in our committee meeting to hear the work that our students are taking the lead on. And then there's also a new subcommittee of the Diversity Council, and that's the students taking action together. So our high school students are on it. They're very thoughtful and in how they're approaching making sure they're including their peers and making sure that LNC is a place that they all want to be at. So we will meet as a committee in November, sometime in mid-November. But that concludes my report for now.
Can I just piggyback one thing? So Ty Steffens, who did come to speak about this, he as a member of the student empowerment and really wanted to expand it to the high school. I think not only was his presentation well thought out and some really great ideas, and he's a senior and he wants to leave this as a legacy. But probably the coolest thing of it is him talking about this is coming from the students. This is student to student, students saying, we really want to understand each other. We want to meet each other where it's at, but we don't always understand people's backgrounds and the things that make up who they are. And so we want to come together and do that in a way where we can better understand each other so we can be a community. And I thought that was really cool that was student driven and bringing it to us to say, how can we make this happen and leave this as a legacy? So that made it a little special, I thought.
All right, thank you, Ms. Benford. And I get the pleasure for the second time this year to deliver the Thrive report. So, so the Thrive Committee is up and running. We had a full committee meeting in September that I believe Michael spoke about, or Mr. Eastwood spoke about, where we kind of reviewed the goals, explored some upcoming opportunities related to those goals. Some things that we talked about were, for the service component, maybe using some of the data that we can get from Naviance to help cater service to student interest, student-led not-for-profits. We have a whole host of students at our high school who have started not-for-profits, and how do we help them engage their peers in these not-for-profits? And then, certainly the student interest experience in the middle school and the elementary school. So again, we have broken into subcommittees. Each of the subcommittees tackles, we have two goals, so two subcommittees, each one tackles one of the goals. And what that will allow this year is kind of a cohesiveness in each of the buildings. So when we tackle a goal, we look at it holistically from the elementary school to the middle school to the high school. So then that way there's kind of an alignment between the campuses and the buildings in how we, look at these goals and how we engage our students in them and our teachers. So we're excited to look at it that way. And I'm going to ask Mr. Funtis to kind of talk about the speaker series that went on in October. We were very excited to have that again for this year and appreciate all the work that Mr. Funtis put into that. So Mr. Funtis, would you like to give us kind of some highlights on and takeaways from this year's speaker series?
Sure. So part of the plan, which we'll be implementing next semester, is, as I mentioned, working with Naviance to have the students take a career interest cluster finder, which we'll use that data next semester to sort of be intentional of aligning our students with the speakers that come into the building. This semester we had, I want to say, over 40 speakers volunteer and come in and speak to the students. We utilized the study halls, and some teachers requested speakers to their classrooms. So we had a good turnout as far as with the speakers. I think they all enjoyed the sessions. I did explain to them this time as far as what the plan was for next semester, with us trying to align them with more kids that are interested in their field in particular, as opposed to just walking into a study hall and trying to garner the attention of students. Because at this point, students don't know what they don't know. So the whole goal of this series, when I started 7 years ago, was to give these students options. When kids are in high school, they have a idea of what they think they may want to do, from whether that comes from a TV or a movie, but they'll actually get someone who's actually working in the field to come in and explain to them, this is my daily responsibilities, and these are all the options I have in my field, and sort of give these kids, these students, more options of what they potentially can do with their lives. And I encourage students to go to listen to speakers that they're interested in, is also listen to ones that they may not have an interest, just to know if that's truly something that they don't want to do. So I'm excited about what's coming up with the next semester and the data we're going to have from Naviance to sort of align these students with their proper career choices or interests that they have going forward. So so far so good. And if any board members want to sign up for next semester, just shoot me an email.
Thank you, Mr. Funchess. We appreciate all the work that you've done with that program and the growth that it's had over the last 6 years. In September, there was the high school club fair. We had, quite a few clubs, 42 clubs participate, over 350 students attended. We had 2 students, Frida Bohr and Jack Watson, help plan that event, and it was wildly successful. We saw, increased interest and participation from the year prior, which was the first year that we did the club fair. So happy to see that, the students are engaging. We did talk about in committee, with the freshman students, because sometimes coming in freshman year can be overwhelming. What are some things that we can do to potentially plug them in? And one of the things that we talked about was, maybe having some of this around our freshman orientation day. That's the day before the official, the full school starts, where we have our transition kiddos, our kindergarten, fifth and ninth grade. They come the day before, and that might be a good opportunity where it's a little bit less of a hectic environment. So not something that, has been completely fleshed out, but for example, continuing to look at ways how we can engage students and especially ones that could potentially be overwhelmed by it. So happy to hear that they're working on that. So again, our subcommittee work is ongoing. We've been analyzing the Naviance interest surveys to develop like high interest areas where are a lot of our kids gearing towards. And then like Mr. Funchess said, looking at that in terms of the speaker series for the spring semester, so that we can, try to get these kids aligned to fields that potentially could suit them based on their interest level. And again, not necessarily at the high school. I know Miss Perella last year did a tremendous amount of work at the middle school to bring the speaker series to them, and we hope to see that, continue for this year. Where the committee is looking at identifying interest areas for many activities like cooking, yoga, and that's something that we could potentially engage some other stakeholder groups like our parents. So we're looking at, we want to be mindful of our teachers, because, at the high school level, to run a club, a lot of teachers have to sacrifice their personal time for that, and we are grateful for what they do. But we might be able to tap into some of our other stakeholder groups. Continuing to build level growth and recognition initiatives for students and teachers at all levels, elementary, middle, and high school, and then looking at the longevity, sustainability of these initiatives. Yeah, and we did talk about the speaker series, and that is it for the IDENA I'm sorry, the Thrive report. I guess I was just gonna take over all of it. Okay, so that concludes our old business. We're gonna hop into new business. I'm going to turn the microphone over to Ms. Stein and Mr. Tilley to talk about the elementary schematic design contract that we have before us. And just so the board knows that this, they are going to be putting forth a motion for a vote on this. So if you have any questions, or comments during this presentation, feel free to get there so that we can have what we need to take a vote.
Yeah, so thank you very much. And Mr. Tilley can hop in here at any point. We did interviewing. So basically we're at a point where we had to make a decision as an elementary group as to whether we were going to go with an architect and then identify a separate builder or do a design build. And we received recommendations on several options and interviewed several groups then. And based on our needs and what we know what that project is going to need to kind of quarterback from start to finish, we felt like in the end, a design build firm was probably the best choice. And so the first step in engaging with the design build firm would be to do what they call schematic or black line drawings, because while we can roughly say, okay, it's, $250 a square foot, and we're expecting to build a 53,000 square foot building. That's rough, right? It doesn't always include all of the other pieces from the site development to the finishes that you choose and some of the other unique things that you might want to put in, like a slide, because we know we can't have one in the elementary one and not the other. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to do black line drawings. And once we do the black line drawings, then can go out to all of their estimators, and in this environment in particular, whether it's electrical, plumbing, steel, roofing, you name it, they can then come back and give us a much more accurate description. And we're running this concurrently. Haley is currently working with our FA, our fiscal advisor, to help us to determine our debt capacity, make sure we're in a good place, and figure out what we feel we could be comfortable with. And hopefully what happens is all the things align, what our capacity is to borrow debt and what we would like to build as a school, is we can get those things to align. And if not, just like you would do with your home at, if you were ever to build your own house, be like, wow, those gold, faucets sure look great, but maybe not right now. And we will skinny down the design, or we will figure out what we need to do. Or maybe we will be able to do something a little bit different because, or add on other projects that we could bring back to the board if we had different debt capacity. So right now, what we're asking for, and you can look through Bobbitt Construction, highly recommended. I've talked to folks that a couple of different people that have used them as builders. I have a connection through the coalition who is a colleague. They're not work for Bobbitt, but has done a lot of work in their line of work. They work for the Movement Mortgage movement schools, and does all of the construction, talks very highly of Bobbitt, and they do a lot of work specifically with charter schools. So they understand that we're working on a budget, and we're not going to get a $2.5 billion bond referendum. So we are going to have to look at things a little bit differently and be fiscally responsible. So they're a great firm to work in with that, and you can see some of the schools that they've done before. So this contract is a pretty low obligation. It's do not to exceed $45,000. They will do the work. Quite honestly, they've in good faith already started to do a lot of that work as we've started to meet with them and discuss. And then they would then, like I said, take it to estimators. If everything goes well, we would be looking then to partner with them to continue on with the project. If for some reason our bond or our debt capacity does not come in the way we want, maybe the environment right now because of the borrowing environment, if there was anything, this is again pretty low risk. It's not committing us to move forward other than the black line drawings. So did I miss anything, Mr. Tilley, that you felt was okay? Yes.
So the black line drawings are basically an architectural blueprint based on a certain dollar amount?
Yeah, so what they do is we've told them, this is roughly what we think we're going to land at. And so they, again, based on rough estimates of what they've seen in the building market, can say, okay, well, we think that you're going to need to stay in this footprint. Not to mention they've been working with our civil engineer. There is actually a building footprint. So they are helping us to kind of get a rough layout, and a black line drawing literally is just that. It shows you what it's going to look like on floor 1, floor 2, and then it gives them enough information that they can go back to the specific trades and say, okay, based on these finishes, and they'll ask us some questions along the way beyond this, like, hey, do you want to put in carpeting or do you want to put in VCT? Or Scott, would you want to talk about the type of build we've talked about?
Yeah, so to try to wrangle this back in a little bit, because we're not going to build something quite as fancy as the existing elementary school, just obviously budget constraints to current building market. We're kind of try to bring it back into something similar to what this construction in this building is, which is a prefabricated, pre-engineered steel structure. You would never know it, but basically this is a roof with columns under it, and then we build the walls underneath it. But at the end of the day, it's a very nice building. So we're going to do something very similar, but it will be a 2-story, like the 2-story portion of the high school. So that's the most economic way to build in the current environment. So we're trying to get still a very nice facility, but to do it as economically feasible as possible.
So it's those kinds of questions. And they made us, before they even started their work, they said, how many classrooms do you need? How much office space? What are your electives? And just to inform the board, the town of Huntersville has agreed with us again to partner on the gymnasium. So if we move forward with the project, they will be contributing $500,000 to the gymnasium. But by doing that, we need to have certain specifications because they have to have, as an example, at least 350 seats in the gymnasium. So the gym will look very similar to what the current elementary has, so that we can live up to that partnership, which is a win-win because that also allowed us to extend our relationship on other field uses such as HAP and North Mech Park and some of the tennis courts and the swimming pool, like all of the things. So we have a good partnership, and kudos to Matt for having developed that over a decade, because they want to continue that partnership because they know, as compared to working with some other schools and other facilities, this is the head of Park and Rec would say this is their favorite group to work with. And we have a lot of gym space in a very short period that then helps benefit the community. So we would need a vote.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Just so I want to make sure I understand. So this, like, the ultimate hope is that we will use this firm for construction. Who did we use when we built the elementary school? And can you just maybe high level, like, why we've decided to kind of
Oh, I'll
do
take
it a
that.
little differently?
So we interviewed several folks when we went through that process as well. We decided to go with Geo Wilson, and we introduced and brought an architect with us, which was by the name of Clark Nexon. And we asked them to use Clark Nexon, and a couple things had happened in that process. First of all, Clark Nexon was not Clark Nexon when we did some of the other builds here, including the expansion of the high school and a few other projects. They were PBC&L. They were bought out by Clark Nexon, which is a huge architectural firm. We loved the architect we worked with. That's why we introduced them with GL Wilson. Unfortunately, about 3 months into the project, that architect left the firm for family reasons, and they assigned the very junior architect, who was quite ill prepared to work with the scale. He just did not understand working educational spaces. He had never done it. I'll give you great examples. He put in and scoped out railings that on the second floor that were completely unsafe. If you go into that building, you're going to see cutouts in the drywall, because it was all about light and bringing natural light into the space. They designed the cutouts so the kids could crawl in them, and literally could have crawled out and fallen down on the stage. And we said, hey, this will never work, right? You need to move this up. And he said, well, you think kids would really climb in there? And I'm like, yeah, I really think kids will climb in there and over those itty bitty railings you're scoping. So it caused us, just from the architectural side, that caused us to have to spend a great deal of time double checking all of those specs. That's number one. Number two, Geo Wilson, we were one of the larger projects that they had ever done. They had a good reputation in the North Mecklenburg, Iredale area, but this was probably the largest build they had done. And just as an example of why we would never consider them would be the current lawsuit we have against them, because they did not scope out the HVAC properly and make sure that the specs were followed. And therefore we ended up with a catastrophic failure that cost the district almost $250,000. So you always have to look at the silver lining, and the silver lining is once we'd gone through that process, we had built other additions. We had not built a full building till the elementary. We've now done that. We've learned from that, and we've learned how to get the best people to the table. I felt like all of the architects and folks that we interviewed, we could have went with any of them, quite honestly. They were all exceptional. We had done a lot of homework, but we really felt, based on the expansion, we can't be in a situation where myself, and more specifically Scott, is having to dedicate so much time doing a job that we're actually paying somebody else for. And Bobbitt is known for really coming in, and so far, and Scott can speak to this, and Jared and Haley a little bit, but I've been very impressed with what they've brought to us, the questions they've asked, the time that they've spent with us. And it's clear that their quality of work and ability to meet our needs is much higher than what we had experienced before.
I would say that so far to this point, I've been very impressed. I mean, as you all know, I've been in the building industry for 25 years and I'm very impressed. They're very forward thinking. They understand educational space better than any other GC we've worked with. To the point that they actually took a retired code inspector, hired him, brought him on staff to be their code expert to make sure they're always on top of the latest changes in regard to code changes and local regulatory issues that may arise during the build process. And that's his job, is just to keep them on the forefront of just that alone. And that's way forward thinking. Most companies don't do that.
Or, does this black line drawing replace like an actual architect, or do we then also have to go back and?
No, so they have an in-house. So and I probably should have explained that, so I apologize. Design build means it's all in one. So it's a one-stop shop. They have an architect. And the good thing is, if for some reason we decided, or the board decided to go in a different direction than them for the next part, we will have these black line drawings that we could take with us to the next builder if we wanted to do that. I really wouldn't, so far, as you've heard, they've done a really great job. They seem to understand our needs, and they understand the both the education and the charter space. So it wouldn't replace that. It would mean that there'll have to be additional architectural drawings, because, and I'm sure you've seen architectural drawings, like this is one page, and actually it's two. There's one that's kind of the black line, and then some of the external stuff. But then when you get into real architectural drawings, it's page about like, here's the plumbing, here's the electrical, here's the steel beam structure. So there's just page upon page of stuff. So this is just the surface so that they can get an accurate quote for us, and not, which I also appreciate. They're not going to swag a number and just be like, well, we think we can do it for, $250 a square foot. And in this environment, supply chain isn't so much an issue, but there are definitely cost issues, and then it gives them an opportunity to, their estimators will go source from different places. Like this steel fabricated structure, there's a couple of different builders, and they have relationships with both of them, and that's a huge deal because it can kind of play one off of the other. So that experience is going to pay off for us.
This may be a really dumb question, but in the construction industry, like if we love what they do and we move forward with them to go to the next phase, like, are they like a cost plus? Is that how we did the last contract? I mean, are we comfortable with the terms? I'm sure we've looked at like going forward to do the build, like we're comfortable with the contract terms and stuff, that it would be either anybody.
So in this scenario, we do a guaranteed maximum price contract. So not to exceed,
Okay.
kind of like we did the design contract, the same thing. It's not to exceed guaranteed max price on the schematic design. So you'd want to do the same thing on a building of this scale. You wouldn't want to do a cost plus, because that kind of leaves us extremely exposed.
Right.
We would want to come to a budgetary estimate at this stage, find out, hey, we're going to be in this ballpark, plus or minus 4 or 5%, hopefully somewhere in that range, to give us an idea like, yes, we can afford this, or we need to back up and rethink some design or necessities, right? At that point, you can say, okay, based on this, on the final product, once we make all our selections and tell them what all the finishes are going to be, they're going to be able to hone in really close on that number, and then we can establish a contract based upon that fixed dollar amount that we all agree upon.
And is that standard in the construction industry?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Some people, like if you have unlimited funds, you might do a cost plus, but obviously we don't.
So the next step after this would be, they would prepare these schematics. We would get a estimated dollar amount. We go to our bond holders, or
Well, so that's what our current FAs are going to do. Somebody want to give Haley the mic so she can talk about what our FA, what we employed them to do was not only to figure out our debt capacity, but they're going to help us with this next part. So I'll let Haley explain that.
Right. So right now I'm working with Choice Advisors on revised projections so that we can get debt capacity of what we can afford. There's going to be a couple of steps we're going to have to follow, but that's why we're making sure that we're running these two things concurrently, because the one thing they're going to want to know is, what is our guaranteed max price contract amount, right? What are we asking to borrow? So we kind of need to know what that cost is going to be before we ever go out to bondholders. So it's just kind of, right now we're having to run kind of aligned. And then once we have that number, it's like, is this realistic? Do we need to go back? Do we need to make changes? So that's kind of where we are in this process.
Yeah, and I just want to be clear, it's very possible we might not go with bonds this time. Because when we did that the last time, it was great. We got a great locked in rate and that's what the market could bear. But right now, this might end up being a bank situation. And the great thing about Choice Advisors is they're going to market it in all of those arenas. They're going to market it with banks and they're going to market it on the bond market. And then they will help us to understand what that looks like. And if we had one right now, it's that the market is not great. So this may be a situation where we put it out, we go with the bank, they're going to advise us to do that, and we may refi that part of the debt. The good news is the main debt that we have on that's set. We're locked in for, well, it's not 30 years anymore, whenever we took that debt out, but that's where we were. So that will stay. This is only for the elementary project. We're not refining anything. We're just concentrating on elementary 2. So I just want to be forthcoming that, because when they said that, I was like, really? And they're like, yeah, we're just they're the people that can tell us.
We're gonna have to probably get a little bit more creative on this financing for it to make sense.
Yeah, because if we waited for the bond market, we'd be waiting for just a bit, maybe. So great questions. Any more?
All right. Well, if there's nothing else, I guess we'll entertain a motion.
I move that we accept the suggestion to enter into this agreement with Bobbitt.
Mr. Jared, I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. So I'll go ahead and I think I have to sign the contract, so I'll go ahead and get that done. So. All right, and then the last order of business is I'm sure highly anticipated 2024-2025 draft calendar. So.
Yes, and I think this is the earliest I've ever brought a calendar to folks, but I know families plan well in advance. And so it's always a welcome thing when we can get information to them sooner than later. So the nice thing about calendars is we've done this for several years. And so based on feedback from our LNC community, I definitely am aware of some of the things. And I always describe this to staff, and I hate because the building principals have heard this several times. It's always like a giant Sudoku puzzle. So if you've ever done Sudoku, it's like Sudoku easy, medium, or hard. I would say this one probably would have classified as hard. And the reason why is just where some of the holidays fell and some of the dates. So some of the challenges we had on this calendar in future, we will not necessarily have those challenges. But just to review over at a very high level, some of the things that you're going to see on this calendar. A winter break that's 2 weeks long, that we're going to continue to start school the second week of August, which is a Thursday. And you're going to look at that and be like, oh, that looks early. And it is the earliest date that you can possibly be and still have it be the second Thursday. But just as a point of reference, there are other schools that have already come out and are doing that. Concord has released their calendar. I think it's Gaston, or Iredale. So they're starting to follow that. So I think the ones that are not following the calendar law are leaning in this direction. CMS will continue to start later because they are following the calendar law, and their calendar is already out. But the good news is when you start, then the last day of school will be on May 23rd, and the work days for the teachers are done by the 28th. So it's right before the Memorial Day holiday. We will continue to have the 5th and 9th grade transition days. Everybody seemed to like this Halloween day real well. It's a little recency bias. Now, I couldn't build in a full day off because the reason it was possible this year is because Veterans Day was on a weekend. But so I had a little extra play, but it is a remote day. So you still get, everybody's in their jambo. So I think that's not so bad, and it's a half day. Parent teacher conferences will be held the same as they were this year, which seemed to be go really well for both families, to give them a little extra space And then action, and then a little bit of cushion so our teachers could have a little bit of a fall break. And what's really cool about this, there's a few changes that I want to note that are a little different. One, we moved to a March, what I consider a traditional spring break, a true just pick a spring break. And somebody say, well, why the third week in March? Because if you look at how the days fall, you want to split up the third and fourth quarters as equally as you can. That's where it would fall. If we went with our traditional Easter, we would not have spring break until at the earliest April 14th. I think parents will appreciate that their kids are not bouncing off the walls and that we can still maintain the best possible educational environment. So what we move, there still will be time around that Easter holiday. It'll be a long weekend. But the other thing that this allows us to do is March 14th is Holi, which is a Hindu holiday. And we do have an e-learning day on Yom Kippur. So when we can, in the honor of our IDEA goals, we try to be thoughtful, because like you're going to see in October, you're gonna be like, why did Shannon put a random e-learning day on a Thursday? Why didn't she put that on a Friday? That would have been a lot better for people, because that is Yom Kippur. So there is a method to that of we're being intentional about trying to honor and be inclusive of non-Christian holidays when we can. And we could in both of those cases, a Hindu holiday and a Jewish holiday. So that was cool. And then the other thing that is a little bit different, let me see, I want to make sure I got it. Spring break, a stay at school. We've put in some flex work days for our staff. We tried a flex work day for the first time this school year, and that was around in the October timeframe. And what that does is it helps to honor our teachers' time. Some people really need that work day, and they need to have it dedicated where they can come in and spend time or meet with their colleagues, but some others don't. And it allows them the flexibility to work from home on those flex work days. It allows them, there will still be some work days that are going to be on campus, but we're using flex work days more as something that professionally we heard from our staff was something that they felt like they could manage, and it was something they appreciated. So that's a little bit of a change as well. So I think that's it. That's a little bit different, and then I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, does anybody have any questions? And we have to approve this, right?
We do.
Yes, so I will entertain a motion to approve the 2024-2025 school year calendar.
One question.
Oh,
I'm
yeah, of
sorry.
course, yeah.
Was there a rationale behind moving the school holiday to Valentine's Day instead of President's Day?
It was just to space it out differently. I mean, I'm just looking when we're doing spacing of different holidays that it's kind of as equal as we can. So no, it just gets closer to spring break at that point. So.
And which one did you say was Holi
Holi is the 14th of March.
of March?
Yes,
Okay.
so that's that extra day there on spring break.
Okay. I mean, it's still a 3-day weekend.
It is. Yeah, it's still a 3-day weekend. And there really wasn't. It was just spacing it out a little bit away from spring break, because get kids back into the flow of things. But no, it's just President's Day is not a required day, but certainly an important day. So sometimes when they're in school for President's Day, they'll use that to actually talk about civic lessons and things.
You're okay. Happy to hear any questions. All right, so I'll entertain a motion.
This is Jared. I move that we approve the 2024-2025 school year calendar.
Second.
Okay, Jared and Nicole taking the bulk of the motions today. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All righty, motion carries. And I believe that concludes our agenda for this evening. So I will go ahead and adjourn the meeting at 7:58.
Bye, y'all.
All right. Bye, Elizabeth. Bye, Elizabeth.